Hello, you're watching the Paddock pay-per-view. Monday morning today. We're going to be going through all the papers and the main stories that pertain to Manchester United. First up, we've got this one in the MEN. This is by Liam Corliss, and he says that Rom nails colours to mast in search for Serie A move. Obviously, this is one that's been reported quite a bit over the last few weeks. He's quoting Lukaku, a quote from a few days ago, saying that playing in Serie A is the dream. It would really be a dream, the Belgian said in April. I hope to be able to play sooner or later, even if at the moment I'm focused on United. This is, again, like I said, this has been a story that's been going on for a few weeks now, even a couple of months even. Basically, it seems as though he's getting closer to this move. There was reports last week of a potential 2-year loan deal with an obligation to buy. I think it was something like 10 million up front, with a further 60 million at the end of the 2 years. Obviously, I think that's a way to get around financial fair play for Inter, because they can't afford to buy him up front at the moment. And basically, the selling of Lukaku links to what will be our main story today, which is the United's interest in Wissam Ben Yedder. According to La Collina de Nervion, which apparently is a very reputable source for Sevilla news particularly, they've said that United have everything agreed with Wissam Ben Yedder with almost total security. His destination will be England. It is near certain he will join Manchester United if Lukaku leaves. I think if Lukaku leaves is the big thing. As we've said before, I think on Paddock, it would be very strange for Lukaku to turn up at training having said that he wants to play in Serie A, having said that Antonio Conte is the best coach in the world. Obviously, the Inter manager there, Antonio Conte. I don't see a way that Lukaku can really turn up to training after saying something like that. Ben Yedder, then, let's do a little sort of quick profile on him. Last season, he's French, of course. He plays for Sevilla. Last season, he got 29 goals and 9 assists, which is an excellent return for a team that I think they didn't quite live up to their usual expectations last year. Obviously, not doing so well in Europe as they tend to do. I think they won 3 Europa Leagues in a row a few years ago, didn't they? When they had who was their manager? Unai Emery. They didn't quite do so well last season. So to get 29 goals in that team is very exciting. Obviously, La Liga is a little bit easier to score in the Premier League. So who knows how that would translate if United did buy him. Of course, we're live today, so let us know what you think to the potential of getting Ben Yedder. He's 28, will be 29 in August. What do you think to his age potentially playing a factor? Again, 9 assists as well, so he's obviously proficient at supplying goals for the team members as well. Something United have struggled with. We just don't make enough chances for our strikers. I think if you looked at the number of shots taken by strikers in the top teams across Europe, and then you looked at them for United strikers, the amount of shots they've taken, we're way down on almost all the other top teams in Europe. We just don't create enough chances. So someone like this would be excellent. Lukaku, whilst he is quite good playing on that right wing position, occasionally drifting out wide and getting crosses, and he is actually quite good at crossing the ball, he's not a playmaker in any sense of the word. And I think Ben Yedder would be much better at that. Looking at just sort of general highlights of him as you do, he's very two-footed. He's excellent finisher, and like I said before, his playmaking is much better than any other striker that we've got at the moment, I think. Let's have a look in the comments what you think then. Purple Patrick, he says Ben Yedder isn't the best option. It's more of a quick fix than thinking about the future. We should be thinking of the long-term vision of the club. I mean, I think that does seem to be one of the downsides of him. Like I said, he's 28 and he will be 29 before the start of the season. We have signed, of course, though, Dan James and Wan-Bissaka, who are 2 young players. It seems to be interesting. Sean Longstaff as well, potentially, who's another young player. I think getting a mixture of young and experienced players could be a good thing. And 29 isn't that old, is it? He's still got at least 3 years of being whatever player he is. He's not going to decline too much until he's sort of 32, 33. I think we should be able to get a good few years out of him. And our front players at the moment, especially if you put Dan James in there, is a very young attack. And I think having a bit more experience, maybe that could help some of the younger players like Mason Greenwood, like Dan James, like Marcus Rashford. That could help them develop. Owusu Answer says there, so this shows Lukaku's leaving. Yeah, pretty much. I think if we're already making preparations to sign replacements for Lukaku, there's at least an understanding around the club that he could leave. And obviously things he's saying, you just don't see players coming out and saying stuff like that, do you? I can't think of many times when a player has come out and openly admired a coach for an opposition team above his own coach and then not move there. That just doesn't really happen, does it? Players are usually so media trained and so sort of, I wouldn't say boring, but almost predictable in what they say, that when someone comes out and says something like that, there's almost no way that he's then going to go back and play for United next season. Yeah, people again saying we should sign Ben Yedder. How true is this? Well, that's what I said. La Colina de Nervion, I've not heard of them personally, but if you're looking at reports that you see online, they do seem to be particularly reputable for Sevilla news. Yeah, someone said Yedder is not Van Persie at the same age. Well, I mean, we don't know that. And Van Persie, of course, did sign for United when I think he was 28 as well. So, you know, it's not like this can't work out necessarily. Our next bit of news for today then, we've got Wayne Rooney coming out over the weekend talking about that Louis van Gaal was the best coach he worked with. He said that United, this is again in the MEN, United legend Wayne Rooney has stunningly claimed that Louis van Gaal and not Sir Alex Ferguson is the best coach he ever worked under. Rooney signed by Ferguson in 2004. Rooney's gone on to say that Van Gaal is by far the best coach I've worked with, 100%. His tactical skills, his way of preparing and his attention to the finest of details, I found it amazing. I admired that in him. I never looked at stuff like that before. I think that's an interesting one. Obviously, Ferguson won more than anyone ever has anywhere, but of course he won more than Van Gaal did at United. I think he won the FA Cup, maybe a Carling Cup in the season before, but definitely the FA Cup. It's an interesting one, especially in a time when United were struggling under Moyes before that, and then Van Gaal came in, and there was obviously a very clear tactical plan. And something that maybe United hadn't seen under Ferguson. Obviously, I don't know exactly how tactical in terms of sheer intensity of tactics like Van Gaal, who was notoriously a man of every single detail, which I think put some players off at the time. People didn't like how intense his training sessions were. People didn't like how little freedom they had to play on the pitch, and you could see that a lot of the time in United's play. It seemed sort of stagnant, and it seemed like the players didn't have the courage and the freedom to express themselves in the way that they might like to. But it is definitely interesting that Rooney would come out and say that, because, of course, he's a big fan of Ferguson. He's talked highly of Ferguson before. But I think if you're looking at a player like Rooney who, like I said before, sort of thrived under that kind of freedom that Ferguson provided as a coach, it almost makes it more surprising that he would come out and praise Van Gaal so highly. Of course, he's talking about his own managerial career as well after he retires from playing, and he was saying as well that he would like to implement some of the types of tactics and the attention to detail that Van Gaal instilled at United. Purple Patrick again, they're saying that's a bit of a dig at Ferguson, kind of harsh. Van Gaal only won the FA Cup. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it's been described as a sort of a sensational or a stunning claim by Rooney. And of course, he knows what he's doing as well a little bit. I think he's trying to get some headlines a little bit because to not come out and say that Ferguson, who he won everything under, it was his best coach, he knows that that's going to cause a bit of a stir. So maybe he's trying to just get a bit of interest in his potential sort of retirement or his potential kind of coaching. And Dave Davis in there says Ferguson was a manager, not a coach. Maybe there is that to it. A lot of times, I think it was René Meulensteen who used to do the more sort of tactical side of the coaching, and Ferguson would sort of oversee that. So maybe that's the point he's trying to make there, that Ferguson wasn't necessarily a coach in terms of drilling tactics day in, day out in the way that Van Gaal certainly was. And that was obviously at a time when the club had transitioned from more of a overseeing manager that Ferguson was to more of a structured kind of Woodward coach players type structure. So maybe he just means strictly from a kind of tactical and coaching setup that Van Gaal was the best manager. What do you think to that? Do you think it's disrespectful from Rooney? Do you think that he just means that Van Gaal coached more than Ferguson did? Or do you think, like I said, he's just coming out trying to be a bit controversial, maybe trying to drum up a bit of own interest in his own managerial career? Anyway, let us know what you think to this story, and let us know, of course, what you think to the Wissam Ben Yedder story. We'll be over at Old Trafford again this afternoon for more news. We'll be looking at Rashford's contract update and some big news there. Yeah, let us know what you think to those stories. Don't be, well, I don't know what I'm on about there. Be sure to come back tomorrow for another paper talk. Be sure to subscribe to Stretford Paddock. Give the video a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.